TNC is the name that assigned to this new class of ride-hailing companies, which are mostly app-based. And I'll get to whether they should be regulated or not. So that's the topic that I want to discuss. And just for those of you who are unfamiliar, just a quick summary of their growth. Very rapid growth, right? So Uber got founded in 2009, so that's 10 years ago in San Francisco. It just came out with their IPO. I don't know what the valuation is, but it was expected to be about $80 billion. So the highest of the startups. Lyft was founded 3 years later in 2012, and it had an IPO earlier in the year, and it was valued at $24 billion. The scale of in this 10-year period, the scale. So in San Francisco, they're estimated to be 45,000 PNC drivers. So they're not driving 24 hours. I mean, there's not that many vehicles, they're not many drivers. And I mean, they're very, to compare that, so the labor force of San Francisco is 480,000. So it's about 10% of the labor force is employed in these TNCs. Big impact. They have competitors in China and Latin America. There's Didi. In India, there's another company called Ola. In Singapore, there's a company called Grab. Now, Uber has left Grab. I mean, Uber has left Singapore. Uber also left China. So Uber is shrinking now in North America. Half of Uber's revenues are in North America. They have disrupted urban transportation. So in August 2018 in New York City, each day 550,000 TNC trips versus 275,000 taxi trips. In New York City, there are 97,000 registered TNC vehicles versus 16,000 cabs. So it's the rapid rate of growth. Globally, there are 3 million active Uber drivers. So Uber employs 3 million drivers. In the US alone, it's 700,000, close to 1 million employees. And in New York City, 15 million Uber rides daily. The average cost of a New York City business trip is $24 plus a $4 tip. That's the basis. Now, the last one is a controversial figure, which I'm just throwing in. There's some economists at the University of Chicago who estimated how much consumer surplus is derived by Uber. Consumer surplus is the following number. If I'm paying $20 to the Uber trip, but I would have paid $30 if I had to, then the $10 is my surplus. So if you add up all the surplus of Uber passengers, it's claimed to be $6.8 billion. So Uber is contributing to consumer welfare. There's criticisms and regulation. The criticisms come from several sources. The first one is that taxi drivers are hurt by TNC competition. Right? Basically, taxis are essentially being eliminated by Uber. The second one is more difficult to figure out, but the estimate is that TNC drivers are paid sub-minimum wage. In the case of New York City, after expenses, drivers earn $14.25 an hour. The minimum wage in New York City is $15, so they're being paid sub-minimum. Same story in San Francisco. Not only that, but it's the drivers who face most of the business risk adopted by the drivers, right? But the platform just serves as a pass-through. It's whether if you're a driver, you own your own car, and whether you make money or not, you depend on bear the risk. Right? Public transit loses passengers. So indeed it is the case that these TNCs take away ridership from buses and trams. So private owners are unhappy because they create congestion. It's estimated in San Francisco between 2010 and 2016, the increase in congestion in San Francisco streets that 50% is caused by Uber and Lyft. That's the estimate. So as a result, cities are now beginning to regulate TNCs. So that's the motivation for regulating TNCs. And what kind of regulations? New York City is the most advanced in regulating. So in this, as of December last year, so a few months ago, New York City has frozen TNC vehicle registration. So no new TNCs can be registered for 1 year. It's a trial period to see what the impact of such a regulation is. The second thing, and that's more imaginative, is that they have fixed the minimum wage for TNC drivers at $17.22 an hour. It's a little complicated because the driver earns its piece wage, right? You earn only if you carry a passenger. If you're not earning, you're not carrying a passenger, even though you're working. I mean, you're still in your car, but there's no passenger. So the calculation of the hourly wage is a little complicated. What they do is you take the total amount of time the driver spent carrying the passenger. You know that's on the app, whether it's on or off. Divide by the total amount of time the app is on. So that gives you a weighting factor as to how much of the actual money that you collect should be weighted to amount to $17.22. $17.22 corresponds to $15 minimum wage because you have to add your unemployment and stuff like that. So that's the $17. Two TNC drivers, Uber drivers, appealed to a London court to say that they should be treated as employees rather than as what Uber calls them as driver partners. That's the Uber terminology for drivers, that they should be treated as employees because their lives are controlled by Uber, and the London court agreed with them, and now it's been appealed, so it's gone through 3 levels, and now there's a final appeal to the Supreme Court in London. Uber has appealed that not to be treated as employees. If they're treated as employees, they would get compensation, extra benefits, medical, etc., minimum wage. That's why Uber is resisting. And I'll show you later some numbers which said they have to resist that if they're going to ever make money. California has a Supreme Court, 2 gig economy employees, I forget the name of the company, they're not Uber. The California Supreme Court agreed that they should be treated as employees, provided they pass 3 tests called ABC. I forget what the 3 tests are, but test ABC corresponds to that substantially the company controls what they do and when they do it, and they are not autonomous, they're not independent in the normal sense of independence, okay, so they're not freelance. And so California passes now, there are Uber drivers who are saying that they should be treated in the same way as these drivers, and that would revolutionize, if that company stands, it would revolutionize gig economy. Gig economy today in the US is a huge number of people. So that would turn upside down many of these businesses, which Seattle is considering similar rules to raise driving. Quick summary, these are financials from Uber's IPO for 2018, so you get some ideas. So the bookings is the total fares collected of Lyft drivers. This is throughout, Lyft is only in North America, so the passengers paid Lyft drivers $8.1 billion.
Things I'm good at.
I wasn't done a per ride calculation by dividing the total, the 619 million rides that Lyft drivers gave. So that's $13 per ride is what passengers paid Lyft. Out of which drivers took, out of the 8.1 billion, they took 5.9 billion that they kept. So that corresponds to $9.50 a ride. So the drivers got $9.50 a ride, when passengers paid $15. So the remainder, which is $3.50, is what Lyft considers its revenue. How much passengers gave, how much drivers kept, and how much Lyft gets. 3.5. In their IPO, there's something they call cost of revenues. I'll come to that in a second, what that is, but anyway, it's $2 per ride. Cost of revenues is primarily insurance costs that Lyft has to pay because it's a TNC, you have to the state. Secondly, payment processing. You all pay by credit card, and the credit card company takes 1 or 2% away, right? So that's another thing. The third cost, which is I was surprised to find, hosting and platform-related technology, doing the matching platform and the assignment, which is all AWS, right? And that's $100 million a year for Lyft. They pay to AWS for doing all their data costs. So that amounts to $2. So out of the $350, if it collects, $2 goes to insurance. And nevertheless, Lyft made a loss in 2018 of $910 million, which is $1.47 per ride. Was the loss. Now, it's very difficult to figure out what the total cost. So I'm taking the total cost as mine to be the revenue they made, which is $2, plus the loss. That's $1.47. So the total cost per ride is $4.97, and they collect $3.50. So there's a subsidy of $1.50 per ride if you take Lyft. That's why neither of these companies who have made any money. They're subsidizing each ride to $1 to $2 per ride. Okay. And in prospectus, they say they may not make money ever. So it's a strange business where you keep losing money, but you raise a lot of money. Okay, so the purpose of my talk is to try to explain this phenomenon, right? How is it, and in particular, how do regulations affect the TNC marketplace? The TNC marketplace is sort of three sets of agents: the drivers, passengers, and the platform. Right? The platform is the mediating between the supply and the demand side. So I want to explain how much do drivers earn and why do they earn what they earn. What is the cost to passengers and what is the profits to the platform. And I'll focus on three regulations which are interesting. The first one is the cap on the number of drivers that you allow, or cap on the number of vehicles. Minimum wage of TNC drivers, what would that do to these decisions of everybody? And the congestion surcharge, which is what planners are interested in and citizens are interested in. So the big picture is like this. City Hall sets regulations, right? The regulations are those three that I mentioned, the minimum wage, the cap, and the congestion surcharge. So all the other actors have to accept these regulations, and the other actors are the platform itself, the passengers, and the vehicles, and the drivers. So Uber sets, it's sort of a leader-follower system. I mean, Uber sets the prices, right? The prices, there are two sets of prices: the fares that you pay and the wages that the drivers get. So they pay to the demand side and the supply side. So once this is set, once these two are set, there's an equilibrium mechanism in which people decide, given the fares, whether they're going to take a ride or not take a ride, and drivers decide whether they're going to become an Uber driver or not become an Uber driver, become a rich, right? So there's an equilibrium between supply and demand coming from the prices that are set by Uber. Okay? So that's something we need to calculate in order to figure out what the reaction would be. And given that, you can see, and all these regulations are assumed to be fixed, so that's the. But then, knowing this, you can treat this as parameters and see what are the best regulations set. Should the wages be $15, $20, $12, etc.? Okay? So the goal is to predict the decisions of the platform. The platform is going to be profit maximizing. Passengers are going to be utility maximizing. Drivers are going to be weight maximizing. So that's the sort of standard economic model. And we can calculate then how the decisions are going to be affected as you change the exogenous regulations. It's kind of a standard story. So the focus is going to be on platform pricing and the market response. How is the equilibrium? Okay? So we have to build a model. Build a model of passengers, that would be the demand side, that would be the model of the drivers, that would be the supply side. The platform is sort of just greed. It's simply going to maximize its profits. There's no particular story there. So, passenger model is each passenger faces a trip cost. Right? And this is traditional in transportation. That would be sum of two terms. One is cost of T, which is waiting time. I have to wait outside. If I'm taking a bus or taking a train or taking an Uber or myself. That's the waiting time for the ride to arrive. P1 is the cost of the ride. Whether it's Uber cost or gasoline, in the case of private cars and so on. Alpha and beta are waiting factors so that I can convert everything to a dollar cost. Okay. T is the pickup waiting time. P1 is the per month price. Each passenger now got to decide, you're a passenger, whether or not, if you face this cost, whether you would take that Uber ride or do something else. So you assume an opportunity cost, right, which is all the other possible transportation modes that you have available. Drive, walk, bus, etc. You represent all of that by some probability distribution. So if C is the cost of this, let's say $20, F sub P of 20 would be 10%. It would mean that if 10% of the people would take that at $20. If C was $5, it might be 50% would take that. Right? So FP of C is the probability that the passenger, typical passenger, would take that particular Uber given the cost. Okay? So that's the traditional. In a more detailed story in transportation, I would have also, in addition, a cost for walking, another cost for public transit, another cost for private cars. I have 4 or 5 options, and each of them then, given those 4 or 5 prices, there would be a probability that I would take Uber versus something else versus something else. So there's this typical sort of logic model that is very common in transportation of demand modeling. But here we just have one option, which is take Uber or do something else. So the demand function then, given C, how many people actually take Uber is given the following way. We're doing per minute, right? This is a floor. How many people Ubers come and go, so every minute how many people would take Uber would be the arrival rate of all potential passengers. So I assume that there's so many trips being made per minute in New York City or San Francisco or here. That's this number. The number of new passengers per minute. Multiplied by this. The proportion of those new passengers who would take Uber. That would be the demand for Uber given the cost C. Okay? So the only parameter here, if I know this, then the only parameter is how many new trips originate in that city or in that market area. So that's that. So this model of trip cost comes from the paper of Mooring in 1972. Now, so let's just make it a little bit more mathematical, and that comes from here. F sub P, this is the cost C I had, so F sub P is that distribution function, so 1 minus F sub P is the number which would actually take Uber. Lambda 0 is the natural, the new trips originating per minute, so I assume I somehow know that, how many trips are produced in a city. So this would be the demand for Uber. Given C, or given P1 and given T and alpha and beta, then I would know how many people will take every minute new rides into Uber. Okay? Let's look at the driver's side. I'm looking at wages, not per trip. Lambda is the number of new rides per minute. P2 is the per ride given to the driver. P1 is what the passenger pays, P2 is what the driver gets per ride. So P2 lambda is the total amount of money per minute that drivers get. N is the number of drivers. So P2 lambda divided by N is the wage rate per minute or per hour, whatever, per that every driver gets on average. Okay? So that's the wage rate. P2 is compensation drivers per mile or per trip. Lambda is the number of trips per hour or per minute. So P2 lambda is the total amount of wage bill, if you want, that the drivers get. N is the total number of drivers, so divide one by the other, I get per driver wage. N is the total number of drivers. So that will be a decision on Uber's part. How many drivers they're going to hire? They're going to hire 1,000, 500, 200. So that will be a decision variable. P2 is another decision variable on the part of Uber. Lambda is something coming from the equilibrium side on the demand side. So out of this, P2 and N are going to be selected by Uber. Just like on the demand side, each driver has a reservation wage. If the wage is $5 an hour, they're not going to work. If it's $50 an hour, they will work for sure. In between, there's a probability that they will work or not work, right? So that the R is the proportion of available drivers who will work for Uber at wage rate R. The higher the R, the closer this will be to 1. Okay? And 0 is the total number of people who are likely to come as an Uber driver. So that's the total labor pool from which Uber selects its drivers. And that's the fraction of drivers that Uber will select. And that's then end up being the total number of drivers. Okay? So that's the supply side. So the market equilibrium is straightforward. That's the supply side. Uber selects P2 and selects N. Lambda will be determined as the number of total demand. So that's an implicit demand. That's the total driver pool. So that'll be the total supply driver. Remember that this is implicit. I mean, I cannot select N. And similarly, that's the total demand. Every minute, so many new passengers show up. Pardon me? Yes, so if I give you what Uber decisions, let's say, which is P2, which is N, which is, I'm not sorry, not N, P2, P1, and that's it. And lambda 0 and N0 are parameters. So Uber would select P1, then select P2. If we know T and alpha and beta, then there are two equations and two unknowns, and we can solve them and we find how many drivers there are and how many passengers there are, how much drivers earn, how much passengers pay, everything will be done. Okay? So it's not simple supply-demand equation, but roughly like that, right? Because there's non-linearities coming from the end of the sides. Now, one thing which is implicit here is T. T is the amount of waiting time. That is, think about it as a queuing system. You are a passenger, so you join the queue, you're waiting for a driver to become free from somewhere and pick you up. The amount of time that the driver takes to pick you up will determine T, right? So that's a stochastic variable. And that in turn will depend on how many, when you decide to join, to take an Uber, how many drivers, idle drivers there are. It tells you, gives you the gate closest or whatever it gives you, and how many closed there are depending on how many free idle drivers there are. The more the number of idle drivers, the smaller will be a waiting time. So that's a variable which is part of the calculation. Okay, so let's come to that question. So that's the following. So you build a model. You build a model in which you say this is the area of your city, and you say at any given time there is 100 idle drivers and they'll be uniformly distributed, and any time you are showing up somewhere. So given that, and given 100 idle drivers, how long does it take for somebody to reach you? Assume the average speed is 5, 10, 15 miles an hour. Then it's a sort of queuing model, and the answer turns out to be something like this, which is It's the square root law. Some constant, depends on the geometry of the city, divided by the square root of n is the total number of drivers that Uber has hired. Lambda over mu is the expected number of drivers who are going to be busy. Lambda is the total number of demands by passengers. The service time is like mu. So lambda divided by mu is the expected number of drivers who are busy at any given time. N is the total number of drivers they got. So that difference is the number of idle drivers. The square root is easy to understand, right? Suppose the city is a 1 by 1 square and there's 100 drivers. Uniformly distributed, how far is one going to be, right? And if you just think about it, it will depend on the inverse of the square, of the area. Right? So that's where the square root comes in. Okay? So that's that. So now I can replace this t like that. Then I just have n and lambda. So now the t has disappeared, so there are only two variables, p1 and p2, which is set by Uber. You solve this thing, you get lambda and yeah.
So here you only assume that so we have enough supply.
Yes, so I'm assuming that Uber will always hire enough drivers, so on average, they can support the demand.
Yeah, like I would, otherwise like the longest we would be realizing that.
Right, absolutely right. So there's an assumption, which is the case in the US. Now, people tell me that in China it's not like that. In the case of Didi, there's undersupply, and so you may have to wait 12 minutes, 15 minutes, or something like that to get supply, right? So you have to make the model a little bit more complicated. But still, it depends upon the average demand and the total supply available as to how long you have to wait. Okay? But in the US, this is right. So in the US, but you're right. There's an implicit assumption that n is bigger than lambda, which is the average load.
The C values from C to
C is dependent upon the geometry of the roads, right? Because how long does it take to get from A to B?
So New York is different from
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So in the appendix of the paper, there's a long calculation on how long to do all of this. And as you can imagine, still the square root law is correct, but there's constants involved having to do with.
Yeah, I thought C stood for 10.
No, see that's not. C is this constant, which comes from how long will it take to go from some place to some place. Okay? Congestion will come later. Okay, is that clear? This model about the basic story. So, now let's look at some numerical solutions. So suppose you're Uber, I assume you're a monopoly, so you're going to set P1 and P2. Fare and the driver price. Lambda is natural, right now people are showing up, and lambda is determined by this equation, and n is something that you decide, but you didn't decide because you selected P2, that's how you decide it. So that's your problem, to maximize your profit, lambda times P1 minus P2 tells you the expected profit, and subject to those constraints. Here's some numbers for San Francisco. In San Francisco, the number of passengers per minute is about 140. 140 passengers show up in a minute. The average number of drivers in San Francisco is 32. The ride price is so that's P1. The driver pays P2, $6.90. P1 minus P2, that's lambda. And so when you work it out, the driver hourly wage is $6. This is gross. From which has to come, the expenses for the gas, the car, and insurance, etc. Just to get some feeling of what the numbers are. So now let's do using the parameters that I've described here. So I can do this maximization. And I want to look at simply the price per trip as the potential passenger is landing 0 varies from 500. So you solve that. Once the potential passengers double. I just want to get some understanding of how this thing scales. Big cities, small cities, lots of people, no bother to worry about. But the cost per ride, P1 will increase and there's more demand. So it goes up 15% from $9.19 to $11. The driver payment increases 13% from $6. Again, the honorary 500,000 as potential passengers double, driver will increase 41%. But the important point is, yes? The driver wages increased 41% for two reasons. Number one, the wages have increased. B2 per trip fare that driver collects has gone up. More importantly is that the driver occupancy, utilization, the amount of time the driver is busy carrying something goes up. Or utilization rate of the driver. So the intensity of the driver goes up, and your wage will depend upon how many new passengers you collect, plus how long you work productively, like carrying something. So if that turns out, occupancy increases 23%. So it's the product of the two which gives rise to the increased occupancy. So carrying more people, and there's more. And the price per ride is higher. So utilization is an important parameter. The inverse side of utilization is an idle driver. An idle driver is useful to Uber because the idle driver decreases the pickup time. Decreasing the pickup time is useful for passengers, so it raises the price. So you have to equilibrate between those two forces on the road. So this is a New York City story. So as the number of potential passengers doubles, the cost per ride goes up. Driver payment increases 6.6%. The platform share increases 20%. Platform pays 20% more money. The driver wages increase 29% from 17 to 24 because the driver utilization increased 25%. The driver will carry 25% more passengers. The flip side to that, in the absence of the wage floor, suppose there's no wage floor, it's not regulated the case, then if you think about the doubling of passengers corresponds to peak hour versus off-peak hour. Peak hour is what you do. That means that the driver wages will drop during an off-peak hour. So the driver bears a lot of the risk in terms of fluctuations and earnings, depending on which traffic is. So that's one of the complaints of drivers, is that they're bearing all the risk, but until today in New York City, and elsewhere, there's no minimum wage anywhere else except in New York City, is your wages will fluctuate a lot depending on where you are at what time. So now let's suppose, given that, people said, because of this big fluctuation, let's put a cap on the number of drivers, right? And the thinking is very simple. If I put a cap, like instead of hiring 2,000 drivers, I cap it at 1,500, so there will be demand for drivers more than capped. So what is your expectation as the driver wages? What? It would go up or down?
You're saying the waiting time.
The waiting time goes up, yeah, but I'm talking about a driver. You are Uber, you want a driver, but you want to hire more drivers, but there's only 1,000 available. You're capped at 1,000, even though you want to hire 1,500. The answer is wages go down. Right. Let's see why wages will go down, okay? So we'll come to that in a second. But anyway, the problem is the same as before, except that now I have one additional constraint, which is that the number of drivers we hire, Uber, is capped by whatever the city says last year. So to solve this, the theorem is that the first order conditions are turns out to be sufficient. It's a non-linear goodness, but the first order condition is sufficient, and the MTI solution is put it up. And so here's the story. First of all, the number of drivers. Think about the cap going down instead of going down. So until some point, this constraint will be active. So the number of drivers will be exactly the cap. Beyond that, you're allowing them to hire 5,000 drivers, but they're not going to hire anything more than this. So then the number of drivers capped at free market or unregulated case. So this is the unregulated case. This is the regulated case. But here's the pickup time. Pickup time, as somebody just pointed out, as you decrease the number of drivers, the pickup time goes up. Beyond that, unregulated case, that's what you expect. As I said before, this is the arrival rate, the number of passengers who can be admitted, obviously will be capped by the drivers, so that's this. Occupancy rate. As the cap increases, so this is as the cap decreases, occupancy rate goes down. So fewer and fewer riders are taking Uber because the waiting time is going up, so it becomes less and less attractive. Driver payments per mile goes down, and driver wages go down as you restrict those. Okay. Now, why is that? So, let's say I cap is whatever it is, 2,000. So Uber wants to hire 2,000. Right? Remember, there's a reservation wage. The lower the wage, the higher the reservation wage, more drivers want to join. But I just want to hire 2,000, even though 3,000 are willing to join. So I can reduce my wage rate, meaning Uber, right? So I get the cheapest 2,000 drivers. That's the way the economy works. The higher from the lower end of the wage scale, but they're not differentiating between drivers. I mean, they're all take drivers. So wage rate will go down as so that's surprising, right? It's contrary to some standard economic theory that if you reduce the demand for drivers, but it's not really reducing the demand, it's reducing the availability of jobs for drivers. If there are fewer jobs, people are willing to accept less pay to get those jobs. That's that. So the point is, that if New York City decided that they want to cap the number of vehicles, in the expectation that that will be a benefit to drivers, that's wrong expectation. Right? That's the point of this slide. That's the normal. I mean, if they think that way, but that's not the
The fact that the decrease in the media is that special.
Pardon me?
The fact that the wage
So this is linear because the cap is 1,500. Uber wants to hire all of 1,500. So this is just platform also loses as the cap decreases. The platform makes less and less money because it has fewer and fewer passengers. Even though the drivers are getting less, the passengers are paying less. Social welfare. Yeah. So congestion is not included in this story. So how will it show up? Right? How will congestion show up here? Pardon me? In the waiting time. So congestion just shows up in the waiting time, right? And that's the only place it show up, because I'm not doing an accounting for the cost of congestion on society. So that is excluded, so external costs are excluded from this accounting principle on the assumption that Uber passenger drivers don't care about how much pollution they're making or consuming. Right?
If we produce zones,
Pardon me?
if we produce zones where I can operate.
Zones.
Driver,
Uh-huh.
I would say,
If I break up the city into zones.
I can only operate here, over there, over there.
So, I don't know, so we're going to look at that in the following section, because now New York City is contemplating the so-called coordinate tax, it's been approved, but I mean, the parameters on that, which is 60, there's a cordon around New York, Manhattan at 61st Street. And if you're crossing 61st from something above 61st, below 61st, you pay a tax.
The reason I'm saying that is because we have different parameters for congestion.
Oh, yeah.
The length of time.
Absolutely,
Affected
absolutely. You're absolutely right. So one idea of the 60 coordinate tax is precisely that below 61st Street is more congested than above 61st Street, so you pay for that. London has a coordinate tax. Stockholm has a coordinate tax. San Francisco is considering a coordinate tax around the financial district. The problems with that, just to mention, in principle, it's the most sophisticated is in Singapore. Right? In Singapore, practically every street, if you want, or every small area is separately taxed by time of day and by congestion. So, but then if you go to Singapore, you see gantries everywhere. The gantries are, look at RFID, because everybody carries a tag, so it knows exactly where you entered this place and which gantry you left, so they can calculate how much time you spent in this particular area, and you get a bill. It's automatically deducted from your bank, so that's the most sophisticated. But Singapore is, I mean, everybody is registered, right? In New York City, you don't need an easy pass, or in San Francisco, you don't need a fast track pass to get. So the instrumentation problem is fairly severe to figure out. In London, they do LPR, so license plate recognition, and that's expensive. New York City first contemplated this 3-4 years ago, and at that time, the estimate was that half of the revenues raised would go into paying for this system. So it's not very effective. But a carbon tax seems to me, while not refined, it's the easiest to enforce. Yeah.
If you want to have to run social welfare or something like that, how do you define social welfare?
How do I define social welfare?
How do you define?
Social welfare is a sum of three terms. The welfare of drivers, which is how much they're earning, they're getting $6 a wage. They're willing to work for $5, right, in their supply curve. So they're getting a surplus of $1 per hour. Passengers is how much they're willing to pay versus how much they actually pay. They're willing to pay $10, but they actually pay $9, so that gives you $1 per trip. And the third component is how much money the platform pockets.
My teaching, if the traffic is down, actually you can't work with issue public transportation. That's actually a really completely reduce the pollution. I thought it will reduce the pollution. I mean increase the pollution because when people choose to move out one day, I mean more people will choose public transportation. It reduce the pollution, something like that, right? I mean, I think in a given way. So
You're perfectly right. I'm not designing the system. I'm just analyzing the existing system, right? And seeing, given those parameters, what in the world can you do? Right? You're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, if I were designing, I would make public transport free. No, I mean, if you think completely about it, the cost of a free public transit will be lower than the total cost of the rest of the transportation that we spend. So, but that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Does the TNC benefit in any way from the cap? And if not, who does benefit? Is there
Ah.
any benefit to anyone?
No. So what is benefit? So why would you put it? The TNC does not benefit, as I told you guys. I showed you the earlier slide. Platform revenues drop. Restricted the cap. Less the platform revenues. Drivers drop. Passengers drop. The only thing with benefits, if you don't talk about benefits, which is what the New York City taxi rules decided, which there'll be fewer cars on the road. It's a gap, right? 1,500 instead of 2,500. Fewer cars, and therefore, presumably, public at large benefits from less congestion, less pollution. But my argument is it's not so straightforward. Drivers are losing and passengers are losing and the platform is losing. Yes, you do have less pollution, but that requires a more detailed calculation as to how much pollution you use.
I mean, if I go back to the zone A,
The zone, yeah.
we talk to taxi drivers, and they actually optimize whether they're going to go rate or fixed, and which rate they pick or not. Because there's a sweet spot of how long the pitch is, the charge of something, it's just like fixed. So if you add zones, then you also have to give the Uber driver a selection application to try to respond or not.
So,
Get more complicated.
in the Uber model, there's not very much computation. These are computation results anyway. So the only thing, so in LA, maybe New York City, maybe Maryland, I don't know. In LA, for instance, taxi drivers are your franchise. There's 5 companies, there are 5 franchises, and each is limited to a particular area. It's a little more complicated, right? You're only allowed to, if you are franchised to zone A, you're only allowed to pick up a driver in zone A. You can deliver in B, C, D, Z, whatever. So and then there's a wasted thing coming back to A. So that's one problem with the zone. The second problem in the Uber case, the driver is obligated to accept whatever pickup Uber tells you.
They don't know the destination.
They do not know the destination. So that is, so an Uber driver cannot refuse you a ride because you will go somewhere.
What if I tell the people,
Pardon me? What?
I'm a Uber driver,
Yeah.
and when I get from the place I don't like, I send it off.
They do get a black star. And I don't know how many black stars you can accumulate before you get the worst possible assignments. So there's a lot of these incentives. One thing that happened, which I should is it used to be you get whatever roughly speaking, what the driver gets depends on time and distance. It's important. Time and distance plus a flat. Now Uber recognizes that if you are driving me somewhere from where it's going to be very difficult for you to get right back, they decouple what you get from what the passenger pays. So you will get, it takes into account the fact that you will not get a ride back and something like that. So more and more, the supply side and the demand side are decoupled in terms of payment, obviously not in terms of matching. I mean, there's a huge literature on matching, right? I mean, there's real-time matching going on with these thousands of people, and there's a big literature on routing and a big literature on ETA, estimated time of arrival. They want to be very accurate and stuff like that, but I'm not assuming all that I'm doing. Now let's suppose there's a wage floor. That's just an inequality. Efficient inequality. This is the wage that drivers get from Uber, right? Total wage bill divided by the number of drivers, so that's the average hourly wage. W is the limit posed by the city, $17 or $15 or $22, whatever that is. So that's the extra. So we carry out the same optimization, but now there's a different and there's the same theorem. The first order condition is sufficient, then it's unique, and so on, so it can solve all of it. Now comes the most interesting plot. Right? So if I increase the wage floor from 15 up to 35, what happens to the solution? Turns out there's 3 parts to the solution. Three regimes. The first regime is up to $18 or $19 an hour. at which point this wage is smaller than the market price, so that'll be ignored. Actual wage drivers will be receiving will be larger than that. The actual wage they'll get is this much, even though the wage floor is below that. Then, wages increase. The number of drivers that are hired also increases. Passenger arrival rate stays the same, then the number of passengers also increases. So you have a funny effect. Increase wage floor, increase driver employment, increase passengers. The reason for it is that more drivers, because of the waiting time goes down as you hire more and more drivers. People are willing to pay more, and they actually end up the cost that they pay, which is something too, is lower, so there's more rides. So this is, economists might call this a free lunch tier. And there's a free lunch in here. Everybody benefits, except of course I didn't say how much the platform is making, right? But certainly the drivers and the passengers both benefit as you increase wages. Okay, so that's the explanation. Pickup time goes down. Expected. Price per mile, so even per passenger, Uber reduces the price because the monopoly profit turns out to be that's what because you can get more passengers. Okay? P2 is what the drivers are getting. Drivers' wages go up. Platform profits go down. Platform makes less money. This is the best it can do, right? And in getting that, lowering the fares for drivers and raising the wages of drivers, and the social welfare goes up. So you can say this really is a free lunch in the sense that the sum of the platform profits plus the surplus of drivers plus the surplus of passengers indeed goes up as you increase the wages.
Except that
Pardon me?
happen that Uber goes out of business. Because
At some point Uber goes out of business, but Uber, you might say, is going out of business right now also. I'll come to that later.
Okay, how much lower it is than
Yeah,
the one
no, that's correct. That is absolutely right. So I'm not saying that this is sustainable necessarily. No, but it is already being accepted in New York City that the city can fix minimum wage. It's unlikely to make it 25 bucks an hour.
No.
Right? It's somewhere around 19 or 20 is where it is doing. So
This is stupid, but what if you recast the problem as instead of an optimization problem as a gain problem, where the driver and the company sort of cooperate or compete so that you're not
cooperate to screw the passenger? To cooperate. So
cooperate individually to try to find a sort of Nash equilibrium or something like that.
So, remember here, today, drivers are not organized. So they cannot form a union and suggest what you suggested, that is to cooperate or compete with the owners to say this is what we will do. They may do it as taxis. There are taxi unions. And taxi unions, you might say, are doing what you're proposing to do, that is with taxi owners. But usually there's a bank or somebody who owns the taxi and rents it out to the taxi drivers.
Or Trump's lawyer.
Or some.
Trump's lawyer.
Trump's lawyer.
Yes, Trump's lawyer, right, oh yeah. Trump's lawyers. So that is a possibility, but that is exactly what the story was, right? And So in the case of New York City, a medallion, which is belonged to that club, had reached $1 million.
It doesn't work.
No, it did not work because Uber came and ate their lunch and their dinner and everything.
Even before it was not working. For instance, in London, people were driving on a business.
No, I'm talking about New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. And San Francisco, the same story.
And the driver would drive, would start it because the big owners would take the car and they would work like that.
Correct. So it is not that. So I think the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission is trying to do what you're suggesting, but there are a lot of pressures against that. Right? To give you, New York City is the only place, only city, only agency which gets all the data from Lyft and Uber. So you can go to the New York City website and it will tell you which trip it made, starting where, when, ending where, when, how much they paid. New York City is the only one which has that. They all have the data. In the case of California, the San Francisco Metropolitan Transportation Authority asked for that data. The corresponding agency is the Public Utilities Commission, statewide. The Public Utilities Commission refused to give them the data. They said that is an agreement they signed with Uber and Lyft and whoever that this data will not be made public. Now, I've gone to give a talk in Sacramento, which is our capital, and the staffers. Staffers said, oh, the legislature just passed a vote saying, ordering the PUC to give the data to whoever. And all they need to do that is that the city representatives of San Francisco and LA appeal to their legislative leaders to pass such a bill, and it'll pass. So they're not doing that. Uber, as I said, is the biggest private employer in San Francisco. And they wield a lot of power, right? So that kind of thing, taxi, TLC in New York City is an independent agency. And PUC supervises not just Uber, supervises the electricity, supervises the telephony, supervises that's a big.
Also, there is other industry in New York.
So, pardon me?
There is other industry in New York.
Yes. No, so this is called regulatory capture, right?
Can I add a survivability constraint to the company in terms of lower bounds?
It's unclear what the survivability constraint is.
Trade-off.
So I will, let me continue because my time has run out already. Right? So I just want, maybe I want to finish the whole thing. So this is the number of drivers and the congestion surcharge. So just quickly. Same thing will happen. I add, for every ride, I add a congestion surcharge. Right? Disaster. Tax, I increase the tax, we're talking about $3. The number of drivers goes down, the number of passengers goes down, it's bad news. But if together with that I put a wage bound, it's not there. So if you want to do a tax on congestion or whatever, you better also impose a minimum wage. Otherwise the number of drivers will go down, the number of passengers will go down, and it's been the same story as a platform. Okay? And I'll stop here. This is my last slide, and then we can discuss extending this thing, the platform subsidy. So, as you know, both Uber and Lyft and everybody else subsidizes drivers and passengers. So how would you model this? And the way you model it, you have an objective which is to maximize the number of passengers, right? Maximize the market share. For a fixed subsidy, so you'll decide that you're going to subsidize $100 million this year. You divide that up into wage subsidy and passenger subsidy, which means you decrease P1 or decrease P2. Very straightforward. With the product of P1 times the number of trips, then it turns out that you subsidize passengers more than drivers. It's just a numerical fact. Platform competition, this is the difficult part. For this I don't know quite what to do. So I have Uber and Didi, as they were in China, competing with each other for a year or two. More than one platform. You need a reaction model. So what happened in China is Didi kept losing money, Uber kept losing money. I mean, they were driving each other into the ground. Vision Fund, as you all know, which is the Japanese owner of Vision Fund, sorry. So, anyway, Vision Fund has invested both in Didi and Uber. Forced Uber to sell itself to Didi. So now there's only one company in the monopoly, and people tell me that the day after or soon after it was announced, the wages, fares in Didi doubled. Uber got a share of Didi for giving up. Similar fight going on in India between Ola and Uber. And again, it's the same investor in both. So betting is that one or the other, probably Uber will close shop, get a little bit of Ola. So that is, but question is, how do you do this modeling? So we had a model, which is something like this, that both are interested in maximizing their market share. But you cannot overnight grow immediately, right? So there is a limit to how many new passengers you can attract, which depends on how many passengers you already have. Right? If you double the number of passengers, you could attract twice as many. So the idea is you call your friends. And the optimal control formulation is that you will subsidize as fast as you can and build up as fast as you can. Right? So that's what comes out very straightforwardly and is sort of not unnatural. But then what is the end game? Because you're losing money all the time. So the end game has to be one has gone bankrupt, one possibility, or the two are forced to become one, merger, which is what happened in the Uber Didi case. But it requires a much more subtle analysis.
But then you end up with monopoly problems.
Yeah, you end up. Then monopoly,
We don't want it.
you don't want it. Okay.
Well, when I say we don't want
The
it,
other thing, which if you read the Lyft prospectus, and if you read the Uber prospectus, is that they are relying on autonomous vehicles. If you remember way back, let me go back to the earlier slide. So this is Uber's profit and loss. Is this a good business?
This is Lyft, so
I'm sorry, Uber is similar,
Yeah.
but they just came out yesterday, so I don't have these
Right.
slides. Is this a good business? That's not easy to decide. It's not easy to decide. So, because, I mean, all you can do is compare it to other profitable businesses. What is a profitable business? So, in the usual sort of manufacturing business, there's something called markup, right? The gross markup, which is the cost of goods that you're selling. You're selling these things. So, what is the cost that you pay to make that, and what you receive? So, if I sold this for $2 and I paid $1.50 for the material, then the markup is 2 minus 150, which is 50 cents divided by $2. So that would be the markup. So we want to figure out, is there something like a markup in the Lyft business? Well, you've got to decide what is it that you bought. Right? So I'm assuming, let's say, that what you bought is driver services and etc. So you pay $9.50 plus these cost of revenues, insurance, etc. Right? So it's $2 plus $9.50, $11.50. And what is your revenue? $13. So you do the calculation and you find that your gross margin is 12%. Any manufacturing business would have a gross margin around 50%. Right? So this is not good business.
But service industry will not be.
What?
Service industry will not be.
Say it again?
service industry.
Service
So
industry.
now we say this is service industry, right? But I did not take into account the loss yet so far. How much of this loss should be included as part of the cost? Right? And you can see there's not much room, right? So this is close to zero or negative.
But then you do Amazon. You go to the municipality and say, I want a tax break.
So,
It's too big here, right?
but you cannot just go by a normal notion of
No.
margin. Now let's look at service. So we can say a supermarket. Supermarket is a good example. It sells you something for $1 and costs 95 cents for the materials that you say. So it's a 5% margin, 2%, 3%, very small. Is that the right model for Uber? Or is Amazon the right model for Uber? Which is what Uber wants to say. It's going to become the Amazon of transportation. So they say their market potential is $13 trillion. That's the worldwide transportation budget. That is what Uber's world is. That seems to me bogus. But that is what Uber is trying to do. So now then Uber Eats, which is fast growing, then Uber Freight, which is so there's a huge difference between Amazon and Uber, I think. The big difference is Amazon is a major logistics that has a huge economies of scale in logistics. Uber in San Francisco doesn't have Uber in New York or anywhere, right? So the scale is not there, right? The only place that scale emerges is in the reducing the pickup time.
I will argue differently. I've used the number you had on 10% of the San Francisco employment, and I said, look, because of my company, I offer many benefits to society. My people are employed, they pay taxes and all that stuff. So for that, I need a tax break to make it. Otherwise, if I disappear, you lose the money.
So you're not paying anything.
Who?
Uber.
You're
not paying on
drivers
drivers.
pay taxes.
Drivers pay taxes.
I would say that the company is social value, that's why it's accepted. And then the municipality should give the company something back to keep it alive. So somewhere in the calculation, if you can do everything at an additional cost, maybe you will find the answer, like you see. That the company survive because I have other benefits, not just the economic benefits.
So right now, I would say, people who take Uber think it's great. Everybody else thinks it stinks. Right? You go to San Francisco, I don't see too many Ubers here in San Francisco. Every car that you see double parked is an Uber or a Lyft. There's no question about that. Berkeley is the same story. They're just creating a huge amount of congestion. They are very bad drivers. They're totally impolite. They'll stop just right in the middle. And as I said, they claim that 50% increase in congestion within the last 6 years. So that's an issue. But, as you said, and that's the calculation I gave about this consumer social, this consumer welfare surplus is huge. The convenience is no question. And so we need some alternative, because I don't think it is sustainable that all the private cars are going to be substituted. Nobody I know has given up their car because of Uber. So I don't know how that.
Except in Manhattan.
Except in Manhattan?
Not Uber. In Manhattan, if you have a car, you cannot drive. You have to take a taxi.
No. So the other option, so the other option is to increase parking fees. The biggest cost of driving in Manhattan or in San Francisco is the parking fees. So you can increase the parking fees. You immediately get a backlash from all the car owners, all the shopkeepers, everybody against that. So it is, the obvious option is to improve public transit. Make it free.
That's what I said.
Right? I
I
think that would be a genuine competition.
John, didn't Athens do that for Russia?
I'm stuck.